in Limerick since 2008. Anyone who wants to read at the open mic, please let Dominic know before it begins in approximately an hour's time. Welcome once again to the People's Museum of Limerick. And this is our 4th month at this wonderful venue. We look forward to a fruitful association with the museum as our regular venue for our monthly on-the-day literary gathering. This month we are delighted to welcome actor, writer, director Myles Breen and the poetry of Oscar Wilde, plus the open mic. Myles Breen will reprise excerpts from his recent sellout one-man show on the life of Oscar Wilde, a Wilde fan, bringing us the poetry of the great man himself. Join us for this unique presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Myles Breen.
Evening all, and lovely to see you all here. Belated Happy New Year and all the rest, and what a perfect setting to celebrate the life and works of Oscar Wilde. I suppose this is just little bits of the show, which obviously was a theatrical presentation, and it explored both in terms of the works and the life of Oscar Wilde, touching on the poetry. I feel a little bit under false pretenses because I didn't use a lot of the poetry. But I do believe that, as I say, Shakespeare was a poet / playwright, and definitely Wilde, I also think, was a poet / playwright. I just want to give you possibly in each excerpt that I do the reasoning why I put it in the show and why it inspires me and stuff like that. But to start off, just as a basic introduction, this is how I started off the show. And also what I tried to do in the play was to reflect both in terms of my own life as an artist, as an actor, a writer, and a director, also as a gay man, how Oscar Wilde's life and works have impacted on me, still influence me, and are still relevant today. So I'm going to have to get out the glasses now, because even though I did the show and I had these lines learned off when I did it, that was maybe 2 months ago and the brain isn't as good as it used to be. So if I refer to my script, I do apologise. So the show started, it's sort of like what we all would imagine. Who would you invite to dinner if you could, dead or alive? And one of my guests always, top of my guests would always have been Oscar Fingal, Flaherty, Wilkes, Wilde. So the setting was a table set for 2 where Myles awaits the arrival of his guest. And he's looking at the play setting and the story says, Oscar Flaherty Fingal Wills Wilde, born Dublin, 1854, died Paris, 1901. Myles James Breen, born Limerick, 1964, died many times on stage, hopefully not tonight. Oscar Wilde, playwright, novelist, poet, celebrity. Myles Breen, actor, playwright, director, Panto Day. Oscar, gay icon. Myles, gay. So that sets up the relationship, both in terms of art and life, that myself and Oscar Wilde have. Now to sort of get into bits that I chose, obviously you want to do some of the best hits. And as I said, poet / player, I think one of the most perfect plays ever written is The Importance of Being Earnest. It is a jewel of a play. Like, every word is perfectly placed, though it's not as poetic as some of the other plays that Oscar Wilde wrote. I think in its way, it is a perfect work of art. So with your indulgence, I will perform a scene from The Importance of Being Earnest, which should be familiar. But as I say, every word is so perfectly placed, and it is the interview between Lady Bracknell and Ernest Worthing. Ernest wants to marry Lady Bracknell's daughter, and she is quizzing him. Mr. Worthing, I feel bound to tell you that you are not down in my list of eligible young men, and I share the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton. We work together, in fact. However, should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires, I am willing to include you. Now, do you smoke? Yes, Lady Bracknell, I admit I do smoke. I'm glad to hear it. A man should have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London these days. What age are you? I'm 29. A very good age to be married at. I'm of the opinion, Mr. Worthing, that a man who wishes to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know? I know nothing, Lady Bracknell. I'm delighted to hear it. I don't believe in anything that interferes with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like an exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a grave danger to the upper classes and lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income? Between 4,000 and 5,000 a year? In land or in investments? In investments chiefly. Oh, that is good. What between the duties exacted of one during one's life and the duties expected of one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It provides one with position, but prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land. Oh, I do have a country house, though, with about 1,500 acres attached. But I don't depend on that for my real income. The only people who make any money out of it are the poachers, as far as I can tell. Country house? How many bathrooms? Oh, well, that detail can be sorted out later. I presume you have a townhouse. You cannot expect a sweet and spoiled girl like Gwendolyn to reside in the country. Oh, yes, I do have a townhouse in Belgravia Square. It is leased by the month to a Lady Bloxham. But I can get it back any time I like. At 6 months' notice. Lady Bloxham? I don't know her. Oh, she goes out very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years. Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number? 149. Ah, I knew there was something. The unfashionable side. Well, that can be altered, I suppose. Do you mean the fashion or the side? Both, if necessary, I presume, Mr. Worthing. Now, what are your politics? I'm afraid I don't really have any. I'm a liberal unionist. They count as Tories. They come and dine with us. Or after dinner, at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living? I have lost both my parents, Lady Bratton. Mr. Worthing, to lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose two looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Did he arise from what the purple papers call the purple of commerce, or was he born into the ranks of the aristocracy? Well, when I said I had lost both my parents, it would be near to the truth to say, Lady Bracknell, that my parents seem to have lost me. I actually don't know who I am by birth. I was found. Found? Yes, charitable gentleman, kindly disposition, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew found me. He gave me the name of Worthing because he had a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a seaside resort. It's in Sussex. And where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you? In a handbag. A handbag? Yes, a handbag. A large black leather handbag with handles on it. An ordinary handbag, in fact. And in what locality did this Mr. Thomas or Charles Cardew find you in the ordinary handbag? At the cloakroom of Victoria Station. It was given him and mistaken for his own. The cloakroom at Victoria Station? Yes, the Brighton line. The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must confess I am bewildered by what you have told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it handles or not, seems to me to display curious disregard for the ordinary decencies of family life, which remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. And besides, a cloakroom is a railway station. May be used to cover up some social indiscretion. May have been used for this purpose before. But it can hardly be supposed to be a recommended, guaranteed entry into respectable society. Oh, Lady Bracknell, what should I do? I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness. I recommend, Mr. Worthing, that you find some relations as soon as possible, and to produce one parent of either sex before the season is over. But I don't see how I can possibly do that. I can produce the handbag if you like. It's in my dressing room at home. Surely that should be satisfactory. Satisfy me? Me? What does it have to do with me? Do you think I and Lord Bracknell, who have brought up Gwendolyn with the utmost care, would allow her to form an alliance with the cloakroom and marry into a parcel? Good day, Mr. Worthing. The Importance of Being Earnest is just one of those perfect plain spoken plot, language, structure, and character, and there's so many famous lines have come from it. But it's his use of language always with me and Oscar Wilde that really has affected me. And I was first introduced to him through the fairy stories, and in the play I actually do talk about the fairy stories. But that is our image of Oscar Wilde, the frivolous, just light and fluffy, great bon mots and stuff like that. But also as a poet, he, some I can take or leave in fairness, but some are incredibly moving. And this next one, which is a poem he wrote when he was only 13 or 15, which was a tribute to his younger sister, Isola, who died at age 9. They think meningitis, fever, meningitis and stuff like that. But we also included this in the play because in some ways we look at Oscar Wilde on the surface, the dandy, the witty, the glamorous, and then obviously the life story, which I'll go into later on. But the works that he's best known for are The Importance of Being Earnest, Lady Windermere's Fan, the light, frivolous, as he called Importance of Being Earnest, a serious comedy for trivial people, or the other way around, one or the other. But there is that sort of always that paradox with Oscar Wilde. But this poem, as I say, a beautiful piece of writing, which was written for his sister, who died at age 9. Tread lightly, she is near, under the snow. Speak softly, she can hear the daisies grow. All her bright golden hair, tarnished with rust. She that was young and fair, fallen to dust. Lily white, white as snow, she hardly knew she was a woman, so sweetly she grew. Coffin board, heavy stone, lie on her breast. I vex my heart alone, she is at rest. She cannot hear lyre or sonnet. All my life is buried here. Heap earth upon it. And it's remarkable to think he wrote that when he was 13, 14. Now, as I say, my personal relationship with Oscar Wilde, strange to say, I've only ever performed as a professional actor in one Oscar Wilde piece. And that was an adaptation of The Happy Prince, a beautiful story. And as I said, the fairy stories are very important to me. And we also dealt with the fisherman. He sold one of my favourites of his. But The Happy Prince is a very huge grow in my heart for it. One, it's a beautiful story, beautifully written, the language and all the rest. And in The Happy Prince, I played the little swallow with Graffiti Theatre Company in Cork. And again, the use of language, there's a whole bunch of sections in The Happy Prince where the swallow says, I must go to Egypt. And he gives a description of what he's going to do in Egypt. And the language of how he describes the Nile and the tombs and all the rest is beautiful. But one bit that always, it's funny, even when I did it, and it was like, it was for children, but I still found it incredibly emotional. Those of you who don't know, The Happy Prince, the swallow meets the Happy Prince, a gold statue. The swallow's trying to get to Egypt, but the statue persuades him to stay to help him give first a ruby off his sword to the poor. First it's to a poor mother with a sick child. Classically, he gives one of these blue sapphire eyes to a starving artist, gives the other sapphire eye to a little match girl, and finally the swallow rips all the gold leaf off the statue and gives it to the poor of the town. But at the end, obviously winter has come, and the swallow obviously has stayed too long. And finally, at the end of the story, as I say, improvise inside of this. And I find this last section of The Happy Prince, as I say, there's always a thing of that Wilde is light and frivolous, but in a lot of his works, terribly sad, terribly, terribly sad. So the swallow has stayed. Then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too well. But at last he knew that he was going to die. He had just strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder once more. Goodbye, dear prince. Let me kiss your hand. I'm glad that you are going, little swan. You stayed too long. You should be in Egypt. But you must kiss me on the lips, for I love you. It is not to Egypt that I am going, but to the house of death. Death is the brother of sleep, is he not? And he kissed the Happy Prince on his lips and fell down dead at his feet, whose sweet rains fall on just and unjust alike, will provide clefts in the rocks where I may hide. Secret valleys in whose silence I may weep undisturbed. She will hang the night with stars, so that I can walk abroad in the dark without stumbling, and send winds to cover my tracks, so none can track me to my hurt. With clear waters she will cleanse me, and with bitter herbs make me whole. As I say, there are so many Wildes, and I tried to touch on them all in the piece. You have the celebrity wit. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. The writer. A line I always love. The Englishman in pursuit of the fox, the unspeakable in full pursuit of the uneatable. And he did say the lover as well, which is, one should always have love in one's heart. A life without love is like a summer garden without flowers. And of course then there is the criminal. And of course one of his most famous poems, The Ballad of Reading Gaol, was inspired by his time in prison. Reading Gaol, prison number C33. In Reading Gaol by Reading Town there is a pit of shame, and in it lies a wretched man, eaten by teeth of flame. In burning winding sheet he lies, his grave has got no name. And there, till Christ call forth the dead, in silence let him lie, no need to waste the foolish tear, or heave the windy sigh. The man had killed the thing he loved, and so he had to die. And all men kill the thing they love. By all let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. And then the last role that Oscar Wilde played was the exile. After he was released from prison, he escaped to Europe. He wandered around Europe for a number of years, relying very much on the kindness of friends. One of his closest friends was Robbie Ross, who stayed with him to the very, very end. What always surprised me is Bosie actually joined him. They were together for about a year or so in Naples. You thought after all that had happened, Oscar would just get out of my life. But no, and Bosie then did sort of leave him again. And yet Oscar always forgave him. You've got to remember Oscar Wilde, he lost his family, his wife, his 2 kids, his career and his reputation. But in a letter to a publisher, I suppose this is his explanation. He understands me and my art and loves both. I hope never to be separated from him. He is a most delicate and exquisite poet. He is witty, graceful, lovely to look at, lovable to be with. He has also ruined my life, so I can't help but love him. It's the only thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, a little taste of a Wilde fan. Any questions on, just Oscar Wilde or why?
I presume you saw Michael McLemore's one-man show.
I wasn't born. No, I never saw it. I saw a version of it.
We have a version of it.
Yeah. By another actor. It's like the whole piece is slightly inspired by that. Now, Micheál McLemore's version is very much the best hits. Whereas I was trying to, especially, I sort of did stuff that you wouldn't. Like I do a whole section on the picture of Dorian Gray, but not about the portrait. It's actually more about there's a fabulous sequence in it where Dorian Gray falls in love at a theatre, and it's as I say, that's me as an actor. Dorian falls in love with this actress because every night she's different. She's in a different costume. She's a different person. Isn't it amazing to be a different person every night? And he does say, "Oh, Lord Henry, why did you tell me the only thing to fall in love with is an actress?" And then later on in that book, there's a terribly cruel scene where Dorian, because Sybil is in love with him, she acts badly. Says, "I can't act anymore because I know what love is. I can't pretend." Because, no offense, pardon my language, you're shite. You're nothing without acting. You're a second, what are you, just a pretty face? And Sybil then kills herself. The other one which I would recommend anyone to go read is The Fishman and His Soul, which is possibly one of the darkest, most poetic of the fairy stories. I don't think these are for children. Where the fisherman cuts off his soul so he can be with the little mermaid, and the soul goes away and does horrible, horrible things. And then, because the soul tempts him back with one of the most amazing sort of temptation speeches. Because he says, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this. And then Fish says, no, no, no. I don't want riches. Love is better than riches. No, no, no. I don't want power. Love is better than power. But then the soul comes back. There's a girl dancing with little naked feet. Of course, the mermaid has no feet. So Fish goes, oh, feet! I must see feet. And it's just like, it's so strange. Another, I suppose, I do talk about America as well, if you ever get a chance to read the lectures on America, which is very interesting because we did a whole section on the American lectures where he does say like Niagara must be the first, if not the keenest disappointment of American married life. But he also says the best piece of art criticism he ever saw was in a saloon bar in Salt Lake City. Over the piano hung a sign saying, "Don't shoot the pianist, he is doing his best." But at the end he does say, it is well worthwhile visiting America, a country that knows the value of the word liberty and the beauty of the word freedom. And considering what's happening in America today, he criticizes America, but he's also incredibly praiseworthy of it as egalitarian state, and it's just the contrast between my experiences of America and his experience of America are quite different. Sorry, yes.
Myles, did he ever write anything about his two half-sisters that died tragically?
I did, possibly missed Isola, it was his sister, yes.
No, not his.
No, I don't think he did.
Half-sisters, two half-sisters.
Yeah, the two half-sisters were wrong side of the mattress, as they say, yeah. No, not that I know of anyway. I think that was sort of one of those things of, his father, of course, is incredibly famous, but also incredibly, more than two half-sisters and half-brothers. And of course, his mother, Speranza, was, of course, a famous poet in her own right. The other thing, of course, is, which I touched on, is that himself and George Bernard Shaw would have been contemporaries. And apparently didn't really get on. George Bernard Shaw called him the big fat white caterpillar. And Oscar Wilde replied saying, "Oh, George Bernard Shaw is lovely. And everybody, I have to remember. George Bernard Shaw has an enemy. Oh yeah, that's it. George Bernard Shaw has an enemy in the world, and none of his friends like it." And two very different writers, but also this whole idea of Oscar Wilde and George Bernard Shaw being Irishmen in London at the time is an interesting. Because the one thing I always find about when the society came down on him, though he thought he was a member of the establishment, you're Irish. You're not really one of us. So
wasn't it really because he sued Queensberry and all of the evidence came out in open court? So
absolutely, yeah.
Actually, I'm sure they wanted to leave him alone, really, because he was an aristocrat.
Not particularly, no. My thing is that, no, he wasn't particularly aristocratic. But as I say, a lot of those cases, they ran. And they let them ran. They let them run. But he didn't run, which I think possibly goes back to his own personality.
John Berryman said that what he wanted as a poet was the worst thing that could possibly happen to him without killing him. Maybe Oscar Wilde just thought...
I sort of agree with that. As I say, I think there is that element of martyrdom, as I say, like wanting to have his life like a 3-act Greek tragedy. Which it's an interesting sort of, but I also, that whole thing of it came from the libel case. If you hadn't taken the libel case, none of it would have happened, so it's an interesting, but different times, it's very hard to, I don't think you can say if you've done this, it's very hard to understand. But as a writer, also, I mean, which I sort of wanted to get in, the essays and the short stories are fabulous as well. You can't get everything in. But I'll just wrap it there if that's okay.
Yes.
And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Myles Breen, for an enthralling series of vignettes on the great Mr. Wilde. Myles Breen.